Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to share with you a very magical success story using the law of assumption. This actually manifested by morning. And this is a story that has resonated with me for quite some time. And I really wanted to share this. I haven't shared this on the channel yet, but I'm going to do that today. And the reason why I wanted to share this is because there are two different types of manifestations. There are very magical manifestations that can happen when you visualize something or when you're affirming something. And there's another way to do it by changing your concept of yourself, which is not always going to be a magical thing that's going to happen. Maybe there's going to be a logical sequence of events that are going to lead you to that conclusion, like my grandfather's testimonial, where he creates the Arthur Murray Dance Studio. He had to do this, he had to do that, he had to work hard for it, change his version of himself, visualizing it, but then he ultimately got it. But this type of manifestation is like, for instance, like going into meditation and visualizing somebody calling you, or visualizing somebody texting you, actually seeing on your phone in your imagination and making somebody call you like that instant moment or within a few hours. Or like instant healings, like what my mother went through. My grandfather visualized my mother healing from the injury that she had when she was a child. Like he visualized her jumping up and down when she had a leg injury, and the doctors told him that she would never walk again. So he visualized her walking, jumping, swinging, playing in his imagination over and over again. So that is another magical thing that can take place when you're manifesting things. But changing your concept of yourself should be the first thing that you should be wanting to do, because once you change your concept of yourself, you're going to be automatically manifesting things into your life. Like your life's going to be going pretty good with everything that happens to you, like automatically. You're automatically going to be manifesting things. But while you already created this new version of yourself, if something comes up in your life that is not going exactly how you want it to go, like if you need an instant healing, or you need someone to call you, or you need like a deal to go through that all of a sudden somebody backed out of, then you can visualize this. Then you can create these scenes and then make these little things happen as you're going through your life in your concept of yourself, the person that you want to be. So now I'm going to get into the magical testimonial using the law of assumption from Neville Goddard. This is actually something that he used while he was already in his concept of himself, but something kind of went wrong, on this trip that he took. So he wanted to change it. So he visualized something to change, and it happened. So let's go ahead and jump right into this story now. Okay, so in January of 1946, I took my wife and little daughter to Barbados in the British West Indies for a holiday. Not knowing there were any difficulties in getting return passage, I had not booked ours before leaving New York. Upon our arrival in Barbados, I discovered that there were only two ships serving the islands, one from Boston and one from New York. I was told there was no available space on either ship before September, as I had commitments in New York for the first week in May. I put my name on a long waiting list for the April sailing. A few days later, the ship from New York was anchored in the harbor. I observed it very carefully. I decided that it was the ship we should take. I returned to my hotel and determined on an interaction that would be mine were we actually sailing on that ship. I settled down in an easy chair in my bedroom to lose myself in this imaginative action. Okay, so you notice what Neville Goddard did here. He actually observed this ship very, very carefully, downloaded the information that he needed to see for his imagination, his imaginal act. He was able to do that. That way he can create his scene and make it real to himself. So you can do this yourself. If you're trying to create something, go look at it. You're trying to manifest a car, look at that car very carefully, study it, look at all the details of it, and then you can take that back into your imaginative scene. In Barbados, we take a motor launch or rowboat out into the harbor when we embark on a large steamer. I knew I must catch the feeling that we were sailing on that ship. See, notice how he said that. I knew that I must catch the feeling that he was sailing, or they were sailing on that ship. So he chose the interaction of stepping from the tender and climbing up the gangplank on the steamer, which would create the feeling. It would create the feeling of entering the ship, so he's making that real. And the first time he tried this, though, his attention wandered after he had reached the top of the gang. So expect this to happen, not for everyone, but when you're first starting out with this, your mind is very, very evasive. It can be, even in my own experience, can be very evasive. Okay, so when you're starting to imagine this, your mind may drift away, and you got to keep bringing it back. And even Neville Goddard had this issue. Okay, so his attention wandered after he reached the top of the gangplank. He brought himself back down in his imagination and tried again and again. He does not recall how many times he carried out this action in his imagination until he reached the deck and looked back at the port with the feeling of sweet sadness at departing. He was happy to be returning to his home in New York, but nostalgic in saying goodbye to the lovely island and his family and friends. But Neville Goddard did recall that in one of his many attempts at walking up the gangplank, in the feeling that he was sailing, that he did fall asleep. And after he awoke, he went about the usual social activities of the day and evening. The following morning, he received a call from the steamship company requesting him to come down to their office and pick up their tickets for the April sailing. He was curious to know, so this happened the next morning. After he visualized this, fell asleep with it, even during the day. It doesn't have to be, because I do get a lot of questions on that. Does it have to be nighttime when I fall asleep? It can be any time during the day. Any time that you want to visualize and then impressing the subconscious mind with this feeling state, you can do that. It doesn't have to be right before you go to bed, okay? So, all right, so Neville Goddard was curious to know why Barbados had been chosen to receive the cancellation and why he, at the end of the long waiting list, was to have the reservation. But all that the agent could tell him was that a cable had been received that morning from New York offering passage for 3. He was not the first the agent had called, but for reasons she could not explain, those people that she did call said that they now found it inconvenient to sail in April. And then Neville Goddard sailed on April 20th and arrived in New York on the morning of May 1st, just as he imagined it to be. So this story is a very good illustration of the magical use of the law of assumption. Like if you're carrying out your day in your concept of yourself that you want to be, after you've created that and something like this happens, then you can go into your imaginal acts and create something magical to happen. But then there'll also be like a sequence of events that'll take place in order to do that, in order for it to happen. Just like if you were to imagine somebody calling you or somebody texting you, they'll even tell you why they did that. Like if you were to ask them, after you visualized them calling you when you imagined it to happen, you ask them, why'd you just call me? They'll give you a logical sequence of events of why they just picked up the phone. Like, I don't know, I was just walking over here and I saw your picture and it reminded me of you and I just wanted to give you a call, or somebody else reached out to me and they were wondering about you and it made me think of you. There's all these things that are going to happen that are going to seem like coincidence. There's always going to be a reason why it happened if you dig deep enough. Like if you actually dig deep enough with your manifestations, whether they're magical or whether they're changing your concept of yourself, there's going to be a good reason why that happened. Like you even ask them, just like with Neville Goddard, when he got the tickets on this ship, they even explained it to him that they got a call from New York. They came in and then he even tried to reach out to somebody else to get the tickets before them. But now they all of a sudden felt something came up in their life where it was now inconvenient for them to sail on that ship. So then the next person in line was Neville Goddard. So there's always going to be some sequence of events that are going to take place and some reasons why it did happen if you look deep enough. But this is the magical use of the law of assumption. And this is something you can start applying in your life today, no matter what's going on in your life. If you have something that you would like to change and you're already in your concept of yourself that you would like to be, but you have these little things in your life that you're not agreeing with, or you want this or you want that, or something just didn't happen the way it was supposed to, all you have to do is visualize just like this. Create a visual scene, download the information, then go into your imagination and then capture the feeling. Just like Neville Goddard did, capture the feeling that it's already done, that you're sailing on that ship, that you're in this relationship, that you have this much money, that you're in this career, you're in this job. So whatever it is, you're going to create a new concept of yourself, or you're going to use the magical aspect of a law of assumption. And if you have used the law of assumption in this magical way and you have a success story, leave that in the column box below. Or if you have any suggestions for future content for me, leave that in the column box below. I read all the comments and I thank you for all the comments and all the content that we get to put out together. I love you guys and I'll see you in the next one.